Hi, today we'll be looking at Places by Sara Teasdale. As I read the poem, I want you to listen for sounds, imagery, and other figurative language. In this short video, I plan to read the poem, walk through several of the poetic techniques and language, and then to help you figure out some meaning from the poem. Places by Sara Teasdale. Places I love come back to me like music. Hush me and heal me when I am very tired. I see the oak woods of Saxons flaming, in a flare crimson by the frost newly fired, and I am thirsty for the spring in the valley, as for a kiss ungiven and long desired. I know a bright world of snowy hills at Boonton, a blue and white dazzling light in everything one sees. The ice-covered branches of the hemlet sparkle, bending low and tinkling in the sharp, thin breeze, and iridescent crystals fall and crackle in the snow crust, with the winter sun drawing cold blue shadows on the trees. Violet now, in veil and veil of evening, the hills across from Cromwell grow dreamy and far. A third brush is singing soft as a viol, in the heart of the hollow where the dark pools are. The primrose has opened her pale yellow flowers, and heaven is lighting star after star. Places I love come back to me like music. Mid-ocean, midnight, the waves buzz drowsily. In the ship's deep churning, the eerie phosphorescence is like the souls of people who were drowned at sea, and I can hear a man's voice speaking, hushed, insistent, at midnight, in mid-ocean, hour on hour to me. Teasdale's first stanza has 6 lines. Remember, a stanza is like a paragraph. Stanzas separate ideas and topics. In parentheses, I have labeled the rhyme scheme. I find the rhyme scheme by comparing the end rhymes of each line. For each new end rhyme throughout the entire poem, I drop one letter down in the alphabet, so I start with A and move toward Z. In this stanza, the second, fourth, and sixth lines end with the same rhyme scheme. So that is the second, the fourth, and the sixth. The other lines do not share an end rhyme within the stanza. Thus, this rhyme scheme separates each 2 lines into more of a couplet. A couplet is 2 lines. So 1, 2, 1, 2, and 1, 2. Consider why Teasdale may break the poem into couplets with her rhyme scheme. Teasdale uses the pronoun I often. Sometimes I will refer to the poet, but it is not safe to assume so we must instead consider this I as merely a narrator. Why do you think she is writing from in the first person? How does this change the meaning for you, the reader? Teasdale includes a couple similes in this stanza. A simile uses like or as when making a comparison. In the first line, Teasdale compares places that the narrator loves to music, and in the 5th and 6th lines, so these 2, she compares thirst to a kiss. Why does she use similes? Similes allow us to simplify the abstract concept or murky idea into something tangible or that we can easily describe. It also makes them more interesting, and these comparisons can have layered meanings. Teasdale's comparison of thirst for spring to a kiss reveals some level of affection in the comparison. In the second stanza, Teasdale continues with her basic stanza length in rhyme scheme. So she has 6 lines again, and each one ends with this couplet. So we have 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. And our rhyme scheme is still, these are different rhymes, but the second, the fourth, and the 6 lines all have the same end rhyme. So she is also continuing with her use of I, and when she says, I know. So how does this continuity, or the continuing of these things, help you as the reader follow along with the poem? How does rhyme scheme and structure help or limit the poem, maybe? As we analyze this poem, I want to notice the colors being mentioned. In the first stanza, Teasdale mentions a flare crimson. But in this stanza, she is referring to blue and white light. Consider, why does the light change from red crimson to blue and white? In the first stanza, Teasdale compares places to music. In the second stanza, she uses words like tinkling to describe the sounds of hemlock branches and the crackle for falling crystals. Why do you think Teasdale transitions from music to these sounds of nature? In the first stanza, Teasdale's narrator thirsts for the spring, but in this stanza, she is describing winter scenes. What relevance do you think the seasons have in the meaning of this poem? In this stanza, Teasdale transitions to the color purple. On the color wheel, purple lies between red and blue. What season or time do you think Teasdale is referencing in this poem? In the first line of the stanza, she refers to the veil of evening. In later images to dark pools and stars continue the imagery of evening and night. Why do you think Teasdale is using the imagery of night in connection to the color purple? Knowing the narrator suggests places are like music, where can we find noise in this passage? If you find it in the third line where a wood thrush is singing, you're right. What connection do you think a wood thrush in the heart of the hollow has to a primrose opening its yellow flowers? Perhaps we can step back and consider how these images compare to the surrounding images of evening. Both the wood thrush and primrose seem to represent life amid the darkness. In this final stanza, we return to evening but find ourselves at midnight. Why must Teasdale repeat midnight in the last line? We see it first here and then repeated here. Consider the significance of this time. At midnight, one day ends and another begins. It is also the middle of the night, perhaps comparable to midwinter or mid-ocean, when the season is half done or the journey half begun, or ended, depending on if you prefer your glass half full or empty. Teasdale also repeats that places that the narrator loves are like music. Thus, let's consider the places and sounds in the poem. In the first stanza, there is spring. In the second, there is a winter scene and tinkling and crackle of ice. In the third, there is an evening wood scene with a wood thrush singing. In this last stanza, there is a midnight ocean and a man's voice. Why might the narrator love these places? What do they say about the narrator's personality or experience? We might also want to consider what places are not mentioned. Teasdale does not describe any cities or towns. The only places described are found in nature. The man that Teasdale mentions at the end of the stanza is mentioned after the images of a drowned ship or a drowned group of people. Perhaps there's a connection between the ocean and the man's voice. In Greek mythology, there is a group of creatures called sirens who call out to sailors with their greatest desires, and the sailors are made mad by the siren's song. The man in question is not for certain a siren, but certainly his voice is insistent and hushed, like the world and surrounding noise has drowned out the loudness of its message. At the close of this poem, consider the places that you love and the sounds that you find there. How do they compare to the places and sounds that Teasdale describes?